Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate. Well, as the world focuses on the Islamic State, the crisis in eastern Ukraine continues to occupy international diplomacy. Well, the U.S. and Russia have been sharply at odds over eastern Ukraine with sanctions on Moscow and Russian anger at America's perceived anti-Russian intervention. Well, that tension could have far-reaching implications, as in less than 2 weeks at the UN, President Obama may need Russia's help in the fight against the Islamic State. Well, joining me tonight with the big picture is Dr. Baruch Lugurevich, expert on Russia at Haifa University. Thank you for being with us. And Dr. Emmanuel Navon, an international relations expert at Tel Aviv University. Thank you as well for joining us. Dr. Navon, how realistic is it to approach or work to contain or degrade or destroy all the various terms we've heard used against the Islamic State without going after their bases in Syria?
Well, that's true. They have many bases in Syria. And here, if the United States and its allies, especially the French and the British, intend to attack targets in Syria, of course the Russians will get involved, because as was said, the Syrian state, or at least what is left of it, is a client state of Russia.
And actively supported by Russia throughout their war. Arms have been getting shipped in. The Russians have been very openly supporting the Assad regime.
Absolutely, and the Assad regime, which also happens to be supported by Iran. So both Iran and the Assad regime are basically client states of Russia in the Middle East, which is why it is very unlikely that Russia would give a free hand to the Americans, to the British, and to the French to act against Syrian targets. By the way, Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, also complained about the fact that Iran was not invited to the Paris conference. He thinks that both Iran and the Assad regime should be involved in the strategy against the Islamic State.
Recently, it's felt that Russia and Vladimir Putin have been, in a way, driving the world agenda. They stepped in and diffused the situation in Syria with the chemical arms when it seemed that the U.S. was about to strike Syria. We see them basically doing what it appears, whatever they want in Eastern Europe, specifically in Ukraine right now. Is Russia calling the shots? Are they the main player now, acting independently from any of the West's desires?
I think that Russia historically was always and will always be confrontational vis-a-vis the West. Putin, in his mentality, always sees the United States as an enemy trying to conquer Europe. The fact that most Eastern European countries became members of NATO and of the European Union is considered by Russia as a humiliation. Putin came back to power after almost a decade of humiliating Russian foreign policy during the regime of Boris Yeltsin, when he was dependent on Western finances and support. And he has rebuilt, in a way, the Russian economy thanks to natural gas and oil. And now he's implementing his theory, which he wrote many years ago, which is to use this economic power in order to translate it into geopolitical power. So yes, he is now going beyond what he was doing in his previous term as president of Russia, and that is causing much trouble in the world, especially in Europe, because he's trying to get back Ukraine, which, by the way, in 2006, Ukraine applied to be a member of NATO, and Putin said to Bush at the time that he didn't want it, and today he's trying to take back Ukraine. Same thing in the Middle East. In the Middle East, it is true that technically Iran is not a client state of Russia. However, it is Russia that provided most of the nuclear technology to Iran. And as far as Putin is concerned, if Iran can poke America in the eye, he's on board.
Do you believe that there's any line that can be drawn between the two issues, the Islamic State campaign and what's taking place in Ukraine? Is there a connection on the international stage between these issues?
Look, technically, the United States and its Western allies does not really need the support of Russia in order to intervene in Iraq. As a matter of fact, NATO intervened in Kosovo in 1999, despite the opposition of Russia at the time. Now, Putin claimed that, therefore, the war in Kosovo was illegal because it did not have a Security Council resolution, which technically is true. Last year, also, if you remember, Putin wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying that an American military intervention in Syria would be illegal without a Security Council resolution. Now, when Vladimir Putin talks about international law, of course, it sounds a bit disingenuous or comical, I would say. Obviously, in Iraq, the Western alliance will not have a Security Council resolution because likely Russia holds a veto. Exactly, but they can evoke the right to self-defense of Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, because after all, American and British citizens have been beheaded in Iraq. So when it comes to international law, you can always find a way out. But I do not expect Putin to cooperate with the West, especially if the United States insists on keeping the Iranians and Assad on the side, which I believe they should.